Hi, I'm Jack Skeels, CEO of Agency Agile, and welcome to the Future of Agencies. This is the first of 4 segments where we go through a presentation that I developed several years ago in conjunction with the 4 A's. This was based on a white paper that we actually never finished, that I worked for a long time with Chick Foxgrover on, and the whole project itself, and my personal thanks go to both of them, Marla Kaplowitz and Chick Foxgrover, for inspiring this work and the journey that we've been on by presenting this. I've been at a lot of different venues, had the pleasure of being at Indie Summit and Society of Digital Agencies, 4A's conferences and meetings, and the ICA. Thanks to Leah Power, by the way, for inviting me, and you actually got the ball rolling on this whole presentation. I appreciate that very much. A little bit about me. Former project manager, client management type of person, services industry, management and technology consulting and the like, started a consultancy, started several companies, etc. But one of the more interesting parts of my life was when I was at RAND Corporation, a think tank, and they asked me to study organizations and industrial dynamics, and a lot of the work I do today with our amazing crew at Agency Agile really springs out of that idea of how do we make knowledge worker organizations better and also more competitive as well. I did dip my toe for many, many years into interactive and digital, at one point being the managing director of Sapient's Los Angeles office. I did my first website in 1996 with IE 0.9, I believe it was, Internet Explorer 0.9. And now, of course, I'm CEO of Agency Agile. And just a quick word on our company. We work with agencies and clients using Agile-based techniques, Agile-inspired models of how to operate, and actually focus on leadership education and coaching and mentoring and managerial trainings as well. We have a pretty good plate of stuff and a wonderful team of 14 people now who deliver this across the globe for us, mostly English-speaking countries. Over 180 transformations have taken place under our watch. If you want to know more about that stuff, of course, just get a hold of us. Now, this says FOA in 3 parts, and I realize it should really say FOA in 4 parts. We're going to talk about the entry of a trend that has driven a lot of these things called customer experience, talk about the new face of competition, the future of your agency, and of course I'll do a little wrap up in the 4th segment. So these are the 4 parts of this. The first one, enter the era of CX. Now, at the time when we wrote this, the business of advertising was already going through seismic changes, and this is pre-COVID, of course. But there came upon this other thing, the technology had converged with a bunch of other things to actually change the way we think about advertising and the business itself. A lot of these you'll find you're very familiar with. But one of the undercurrents here is the way that technology has shifted the conversation, and brand voice is increasingly defined by the experience that consumers or customers have, not by what brands say about themselves and their products. The classic one of the greatest TV commercials of all time, the Alka-Seltzer commercial, where the man talks to his stomach and they try to negotiate how much pepperoni pizza he can eat and whether he should take Alka-Seltzer. Highly recommend it. But it's a classic version of that push communication that was very informative and useful in that era. Today, the same sort of conversation wouldn't be between the man and his stomach, but would be between a man and some technology who might actually connect that man or woman with other people who had the same questions. So now the brand is no longer the authority on the product. Consumers are as well. So we see this changing to a network effect inside of the discussion about what is going on with a given product, or what do I need to buy, why do I need to buy it, how good will it be, etc. Essentially, this idea of marketing is that as consumers get closer to each other, as customers get, and information gets richer out on the internet, it's harder to get to them. And so being connected with them constantly gives you more opportunities, though they may not be as impactful, but the sum of these multiple opportunities across a time-based experience for the consumer or customer will lead to, in fact, your ability to influence and all the things we try to do with advertising and marketing. This was such a big deal a couple of years ago that Forrester said the future of customer experience is marketing. And by and large, most brands have taken up this idea. It may actually be true or not. It certainly was probably more true then than it is now, but there are a lot of customer experience executives inside of organizations. Now, there's a little dot on this slide. You'll see enterprise infrastructure. It's a very, very important dot, and it's one to recognize is that one of the other seismic changes was happening inside brands, not outside brands. It's happening inside the brand organization where a massive string of waves of technology that started back with ERP systems and financial accounting systems in the 90s and turned into Y2K revamp of internal systems and inventory management, customer relationship management, Salesforce management, etc. All these things are finally cresting somewhat completed, and now starting to wash over the marketing department. So what's happening actually, oh, sorry, I forgot I put this other slide in here. By the way, I listened to a couple conferences, presentations over the last 6 months, just updating some of this. The X's, the CX, whatever, keep on going. I was listening to, I think it was a Forrester one or a McKinsey one on partner experience. So how do you partner in your supply chain and distribution chains and all that sort of thing? Certainly there's one that we brought up early on in this whole thing, which is client engagement experience. And you'll hear a little bit more about that in these videos that I go through. But there's also cross-experience analytics is a huge thing as well. And employee experience, right? Does the employee experience live up to the brand experience, et cetera? And what is the experience? And this wrapper includes, of course, DEI, empowerment, systemic issues, et cetera. Now, if we believe CX, and maybe all those other X's are just some of them, what happens is the C-suite dynamics shift dramatically. The CMO job description actually is changing. Where customer experience, of course, you would think marketing would care about that and the traditional keeping media costs and production costs down and the like. But the new ideas are this: ROI is customer value. In other words, we're looking at, if we can look at the whole organization from a customer value and a customer experience perspective, now we can say where we want to spend money. And how can we do that? We can do that using the new enterprise integrations that are happening, allowing us to implement systems that track the effectiveness of marketing spend against customer experience variables. Now, what this means is that this drive for customer experience helps to drive a shift already in the marketing budget, which means technology matters more. In fact, marketing organizations are expected to spend far more on the business of marketing and IT than the actual classic marketing spend, which would be agencies and media and the like. What happens now is that what I was alluding to is that the customer conversation that used to be primarily between marketing and the customer, right? And advertising is a huge component often of marketing. Now becomes a bigger question of what are all the touch points, and I show some samples on this slide. What are all the touch points and how do they all interact with the customer as well? Because every one of those we could make investments. We could invest more in product or customer support, sales, etc., improve our technologies and the like. If you're an airline frequent flyer, you'll notice the continual battle of airlines to keep their websites sort of up to snuff and modern and the like, which is a very, very expensive proposition. The unification of these things, that is the homogenization of the data around it and actually the view of the customer or the client or the consumer, whatever it is this idea of CX. In fact, that there's a role that is that integrating function. Now you could say maybe that should be the marketer, but you could make the case that the CFO could raise their hand and say, hey, what about me? This is a financial thing. This is ROI, right? So I think, and I handle budgets anyways, so why don't I do that? Or the chief operating officer, the COO could say that as well. He would say, of course, this is the business we operate in, and I'll take it from here. And you could even point to the CEO who says, basically, customer ROI in this organization is the center of my world, right? So there's a lot of competition, not to mention, do we just make or find someone new who can do that job and keep all these other roles in place? If you want a great practical example of this sort of CMO shift to a CX sort of view, all you need to do is really go look at things like Dollar Shave Club and Henry's, and the way that they actually integrate customer experience variables into everything from packaging to order frequency to messaging in the commercials, messaging in the box, upsell opportunities. They run on a model that actually shows the benefits of this sort of thing. They've done quite well with it. Of course, their stock price is effing great too. I think they sold. Yeah, I think they did sold. Henry's didn't sell, but Dollar Shave Club did. All right, the last little section in this module is what this really means, though, is that the head of customer experience may not be the current marketing head inside of your client organization. CMOs, we know, have high turnover rates and can often be the weakest C-suite player, often because they're sort of non-strategic, and the high turnover rate means that they're not as widely versed. They tend to have a little bit more of a specialist set. Marketing has also historically been a bit of a black box, right? What are we spending this money for, et cetera. Also, one of the main focuses is how well can you keep the costs down and optimize our spend against the agency. So it's sort of more of a cost center focus rather than a revenue center or profit center focus, which are the other ways to think about this. The other side of this is that if, in fact, the CXO is not the CMO, or the CMO doesn't ascend into that role, then the question is, so what happens? And probably CX is actually then the owner of marketing, and CX takes on the marketing budget to be distributed as appropriate, plus maybe some other budgets from those other departments as well. So what that means is that whoever's got their eye on that CX prize has got their eye on money that normally comes to your agency, assuming you're an agency. We're going to go into the next section. The next major section of this is we're going to talk about the competitors. I'm going to do a few minutes on it right here, and then we'll jump to the next section. There are new competitors, and I use this photo here. They're new competitors that you don't usually deal with, and maybe you're dealing with them a little bit, but you're going to deal with them increasingly more all the time, and I'll explain why. But first of all, let's talk about who they are. I use this stock photo here. It's a fun stock photo. It's a lion, tiger, and bear. If you look closely, you'll notice that they're actually quite large animals. I mean, I don't mean that they're formidable animals. I mean they've been eating a little bit too much. And in fact, that's the nature of this project. It's a still from a Chinese wild animal park where they're actually trying to see how to get these three animals who normally don't get along too well, how to get them to live together in peace and harmony. And the answer is just feed them a lot. And if they're always full of food, then they don't actually want to tear each other up and can hang out like that. Now the question is, how much food do we need to take away before that happens? Whatever. I'm not the researcher behind it, but I will tell you, I love the metaphor because they're three dangerous predators, and they're very, very well fed, which is what your competitors are going to be as well. In fact, you're probably the skinny, underfed predator if we wanted to throw a fourth one in there, like maybe a gazelle or something like that. The big cats, especially systems integrators, even in-house teams are competing with you as well, but we'll talk more about that later. But management consultancies are the premier competitors when we think of this sort of, who are the cats you're going to be competing with? Now, The reason they're formidable competitors, remember all of this is CX is moving the marketing discussion up closer into the C-suite and more embedded into the C-suite. Management consultants work at that level. They understand those technologies. Remember the enterprise integration technology that I spoke of? They understand them and probably ran the projects or designed the projects that implemented them. They also know how to describe value across those decisions of what do we invest in, how do we create departments, how do we reorganize as well. And also, by the way, they're kind of in the CX business. I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes, especially what Forrester has to say about it. Now, last and not least, if there is a CXO function, the business case, the job description, maybe even the search will be conducted in part or in whole by management consultancy. And when you go to form that organization, who knows how to command a large budget to make that thing happen? Management consultants as well. Where's that money going to come from? Yeah, you know. And one other thing, not so true these days, but still will be true increasingly as we go back to work, right? Back to office, is they're in the building. They're sitting side by side, and I'll explain the import of that in our next section, I believe, because it's quite profound. Come join me click on the next link that you get on your screen, and you'll be able to watch the next piece of this. I do want to mention before we end this section, we do have some great case studies. They're there on the page, the website page that you've probably been directed to. If not, you can find them on Agency Agile. One is our great work with Carl McVoy. Another is some client-side work we've done on re-engineering the way clients and agencies should partner up. How to redo the RFP process to be really a request for partnership. Until then, in a few moments, I'll see you. I'm Jack Skeel, CEO of Agency Agile.